The Last Word with Irish Life. Have you really figured out how you'll finance your retirement? Irish Life.
Abie Philbin Bowman is performing at the Dublin Fringe Festival this week. His new show, As the Revolution, will be televised, retweeted and available on 40D. Good evening to you, Abie.
Hi, Matt.
I believe you're watching these blasphemy protests with great interest because you've pushed the boundaries in relation to religious and blasphemous comedy yourself in what part of the world?
I was in Pakistan a few years ago with a show called Jesus, the Guantanamo Years. And I think it's worth pointing out, Westerners don't always appreciate that Jesus is a prophet in Islam. So if you depict him on stage, that's blasphemous. And if the Taliban had their way, you'd be beheaded for doing that.
So why was there not a fatwa against you?
Because the point I'm sort of trying to make, and the thing that I feel is underreported, it's very easy to look at these protests and go, oh, crazy Muslims going mad and burning stuff down because they can't take a joke, and see it in that very simplistic light. And I think it's important to bear in mind a couple of things. One of them is that in the countries where this really kicked off, in Libya and Egypt, under the dictators Muammar Gaddafi and Mubarak, essentially the government controlled all media. So if anything was in the newspapers, it's because the government said it was okay or actually wrote it themselves. So when people in that culture who maybe aren't as plugged in as, the people who are tweeting about the revolution, because there's a whole range in society, the people who aren't at that sort of plugged in level, when they see something in an American newspaper or an American film or a Danish cartoon, they assume that that's government
State
approved.
Sponsored.
Essentially, yes. It's like if you read Hello magazine your whole life, and then one day Hello published an issue saying President Barack Obama shows us around his lovely White House home and talks about his deep contempt for the Prophet Muhammad. And you'd assume that he'd said that was okay, because that's what Hello magazine is, and that's their understanding of media. And I also think it's important to remember that because the dictators have been toppled, there's now a massive power struggle in those countries between, first of all, a whole lot of tribal and religious groups, but on top of that, you have the old regime who are trying to cling to power. You have religious conservatives who'd love to see the country go a very religious Talibanized route, and you have more sort of Western-looking liberals who prefer to see a more secular kind of sort of the Turkish model. And so in the power struggle between those groups, it really suits the agenda of religious conservatives to pump out, look, this is what they think of our prophet, and get people fired up into a religious rage to burn down the embassy, because that demonizes the West and makes anyone who's pushing for a Western liberal secular state to the margins of the debate. That's what's going on.
So how do you persuade people that that's not the intention?
Well, I mean, I think you have to sort of engage with them, really. The sort of rather silly suggestion I've come up with is we should make a film about the Prophet Muhammad where we depict Muhammad as a rhinoceros living on Jupiter who speaks Portuguese. And the reason we should do that is because that is so ridiculous a suggestion that nobody could find it offensive. Like, there's just, we know Muhammad was a man, we know he lived in the world, we know he spoke Arabic. These are things we know to be facts. So if you make something that ridiculous and people go, that's just bonkers, I think then they start to realise, actually, we shouldn't get quite so offended about it. But I think it's a process of dialogue and it's a process of discussion. And I just think it's too easy to go, oh, look at the crazy Muslims who are burning stuff down, or equally, look at the lunatic filmmaker who clearly have a fairly nasty agenda.
So what reaction did you get in Pakistan to Jesus, the Guantanamo Years?
Well, I was terrified to start out with, because I thought, even from Ireland to America, you can have a real fall off in sense of humour. Some American comics come over here and they're just doesn't quite work. So I was thinking, this could be a disaster. And I got all the Anglophones to come to the show the first night. But to my amazement, they actually loved it. And I was actually embarrassed, which doesn't happen easily, by how nice they were about the show. And what I put it down to afterwards was, I think it was the fact that, first of all, I was having a go at the West, but I was having a go at the religious hypocrisy of the West, because George Bush was going around saying he was this great Christian and then locking people up and torturing them, which isn't anywhere in the Sermon on the Mount, I think you'll find.
And the current show that's on in the Fringe Festival, which is on, where are you playing tonight?
It's on in Smock Alley tonight.
Okay, and tell us what's in that.
It's about the state of revolution in the world, the fact that the Arab Spring happened and the people of Athens are burning down Greece and the Indignados in Spain are taking to the streets, and you think, why hasn't this happened in Ireland? And then you realise we just don't have the weather for it. It's that sort of thing.
Abie Philbin Bowman, thank you very much for joining us on Smock Alley. At what time are you on?
Smock Alley, 7 o'clock, so I've got to run down there now. So 7 o'clock, and all this week.
We'll let you go. Thank you very much, Abie Philbin Bowman.